All right, how many of you consider yourselves liars? All right, well, it's a little harsh, I know, but how many of you from time to time ever find that you massage the truth a little bit? Anybody ever do that? All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the power of authenticity, and as was mentioned, I wrote this book on authenticity called Be Yourself, Everyone Else Is Already Taken, and one of the things that's important for us to do as we look at authenticity in our lives is actually to look at where we're not always being authentic. And the book came out a few years ago, and a couple days after the book was out, I was actually, my wife and I and our girls, we live here in the Bay Area, and I had done a couple of events, at some, not at bookstores. I actually hadn't been in a bookstore yet. I'd done a couple of media things, and so we were right downtown Walnut Creek, not far from here, where there's a big Barnes & Noble, as many of you know, and Michelle was with the girls, and I said to Michelle, hey, hang with the girls for a minute. I want to go in the Barnes & Noble, make sure they have the book, right? Because Barnes & Noble was not only supposed to carry the book, they were supposed to be featuring it up front. So I go into the store, and I'm looking around, and I don't see it. And I'm getting kind of stressed out, and I think I'm going to go to the counter and ask, where's the book? And then out of the corner of my eye, I see it. And it's on this circular display in the middle of the store where they had a bunch of new releases. And I walk over to it, and I'm standing there, and I pick up a copy, and I'm, admiring my own book, right? and then I start to have this conversation in my head, like, should I buy one? Now, I know that sounds kind of narcissistic and self-absorbed, and it is, but here's what I had learned. When my first book came out, some of my mentors told me, hey, Mike, look, when the book first comes out, it's a good idea to pick up a couple copies when you're in the store, because here's what I learned about the publishing business, is the books are basically on consignment. So if nobody buys them, they send them back to the publisher. So I would often do that when my first book came out, and I'd tell them, oh, it's my book, it just came out. But this was now my second book, and I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of obnoxious. So I debate for a while, and finally I decide, the heck with it, I'm just going to buy one. And I get in line, and I decide when I get to the front, I'm going to tell the woman at the front, it's my book, it just came out, I'm just kind of excited. But as I'm getting closer, I'm getting more self-conscious about it. And I walk up to the counter, I put the book down on the counter. Before I can say anything, the woman says to me, oh, we've been selling a lot of these. I say, really? And then she asked me a question that kind of threw me off. She said, did you see this guy on TV or something? And I don't know why her question sort of baffled me, and here's what came out of my mouth. No, he's a local author, I just want to support him. That's what I said, right? Has this ever happened to you? Literally, as it was coming out of my mouth, I'm like, what was that? And I'm standing there all mortified. She looks at me. She has no idea it's my book. And I can't even recover. All I can do is just reach into my wallet, pull out my credit card with my name on it to pay for the book. And I paid for it really fast, and I ran out of the store. And I'm literally looking at the book as I'm standing in front of the Barnes & Noble thing. I wrote a book on authenticity, and I just lied to that woman. So this is how it happens, right? It's not like we wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to lie to people today. I'm going to deceive them, I'm just going to be phony, I'm going to manipulate people. And it's mostly not malicious when we do it. It's just that in the course of our lives, in the culture that we live in, trying to look good, trying to impress people, trying to get what we want in whatever capacity that is, whether it's in school, whether it's in business, our relationships, we have a tendency at times to massage the truth. And while in some cases it can be benign, in a lot of cases it starts to have real impact in a negative way on us, on our relationships, on our work, and the people around us. So one of the things we got to take a look at is, what does authenticity actually mean? I mean, there's a lot of definitions for it, but we sort of misunderstand it. I remember I was giving a presentation a couple years back about authenticity, and I had a woman come up to me after the presentation, made a beeline right to me and got right in my face. And she said, I'm authentic all the time. And she was like upset, right? And I said, okay, well, what's the problem? And she said, well, I've lost some jobs because of that. And I said, all right. Now, I didn't know her, right, but I was getting a strong sense of her in that moment. And I asked her a question. I looked her right in the eye, and I said, now tell me the truth. Is it authentic or obnoxious? And she was like, all offended. And I said, look, I'm not attempting to judge you. I'm just curious. What do you think? And she said, well, maybe a little bit of both. And I said, all right, I appreciate the honesty. And I said, look, I don't know for sure, but I bet it was the obnoxious that got you fired, not the authentic. Because I told her, I said, for about a decade, I've been working with all different types of organizations and people and leaders and groups and teams. I've never had anyone say to me, you know what, Mike, we fired her because she was way too real. So authenticity is about realness. It's not necessarily about just expressing all of our opinions all the time. How many of you have a lot of opinions like I do? You have a lot of opinions? Yeah. I come from a family where we speak our opinions like they're facts. You know what I mean? It's not like that's a bad movie. No, it's like that's a bad movie. If you like it, you're an idiot, right? And that was literally how I was raised, as many of us were. And we think that authenticity has to do with our ability or our willingness to express our opinions. That's a piece of it, but that's actually a pretty low-level piece. The continuum I always like to talk about in terms of authenticity is like this. On this side of the continuum is what I'll call phony. And we've all had times in life where we've been phony. We've said and done things that aren't true. Most of the time, again, it's not malicious. When we were children, we were all taught, don't lie. We've had times in life where we got caught in a lie and we got in trouble, so we've learned, ooh, yeah, that can be problematic. And then we move down the continuum towards honesty, which honesty is always better. Our mothers, our fathers, our teachers taught us, right? You guys here in school learn, be honest. It's important. The problem sometimes, though, with honesty, and we've all learned this the hard way, is sometimes we express our honest opinion about something and people don't like it. Or we hurt someone's feelings. Or we get in trouble in some way, and it was like, I was just trying to be honest. And then we move back towards phony, or somewhere in the middle. What can I say? What's the right thing to do or say so that people don't get upset? And while our intention may be good not to upset other people, we end up selling out on ourselves and even the people around us in the process. And what we don't realize is there's something beyond honesty. And this is where it gets both exciting but also challenging. Authenticity is on the other side of honesty. Authenticity involves a certain amount of courage on our part. Willingness to be vulnerable. Willingness to let other people know who we really are, how we really feel. Sometimes it can be really scary. Look, it's easier to be phony in a lot of cases. It's easier for just to say what we think other people want us to hear, right? Just to say those things that we think are going to make us look good. But I have many examples of this in my work and in my life where I see, even though it can be scary, when we can push back past that place, that fear of being real, to what might be available on the other side of that. You know, I speak, as was mentioned when I was introduced, to a lot of corporations, a lot of companies. And I got a phone call in my office a number of years back, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago. And it was from the leader of a group within a big bank that I do a lot of work for. And he got me live on the phone. He's like, oh, Mike, I'm so glad I got you on the phone. Listen, would you look at your calendar and let me know, are you available 3 weeks from Thursday? And I looked and I said I was. Now this guy, he runs a group within this large bank that has about 1,600 people in it. And I had come in and spoken for their organization a few times at some of their kind of all-hands company meetings. But he called me that particular day. He said, good, we were on the phone. He said, 3 weeks from Thursday, I just scheduled a team meeting with my whole leadership team. We just met. We have our weekly meeting. And we got into some issues, he said, and we realized we needed more time. And because everybody's so busy, we weren't able to schedule a time to all get together until 3 weeks from Thursday. And so he started to tell me what was going on, and it was issues with their team and where they were at, and it was the middle of the quarter. And he started to get into some really business-specific stuff, and I stopped him and I said, listen, I'm not sure if I'm the right guy for this. I said, my work is all about teamwork, it's all about communication, it's all about authenticity and appreciation. It's not, I'm not a banking expert. You might want to find someone who's got, a little more industry experience and knowledge. He said, no, Mike, we don't need, anything specific from you in terms of answers. He said, what I really need help with is just facilitating this meeting. He said, I have a tendency sometimes to take over a little bit, and I have a lot of really smart people on my team, but they don't always speak up. And I don't find out until later what they really think and what's really going on. I said, sure. So I said yes, and I asked him, would it be okay if I get on the phone and talk to some of the people on your team before I come in? And he said, sure. So I started to talk to some of the people on this team. It's a pretty high-level team, really smart people, really busy. And here's what I found out. They were doing well as a team. And in fact, almost everyone I talked to on the team really respected this leader. He was super smart. He had really grown this business within this organization. They were honored to work for him. But the biggest challenge that they were dealing with as a team is that every single one of the people I talked to on the phone either said to me directly or I could kind of sense they were scared of him. They were intimidated by him. He wasn't open for feedback. He was the smartest guy in the room. It was kind of his way or the highway. Now, I wasn't there to help them with any of their team dynamic. I was just there to facilitate a meeting as I was asked to do. Right? So we get in that conference room 3 weeks from Thursday later. It's a 4-hour meeting. Maybe some of you have been to this. There's way too much stuff on the agenda to cover in 4 hours. You ever been to a meeting like that? But I'm thinking, okay, I really got to bring my A game to facilitate this meeting well. The meeting starts and we get into some things, and within about 20 minutes, we're completely off the rails. I'm doing a terrible job facilitating. No one's listening to me. There's only 10 people on this team, but there's multiple conversations going on. It's a mess, right? And finally I stop. Hold on, time out, everyone. Wait, stop. This isn't going well. And I got everyone's attention, and I said, look, I know we're already a little bit behind. I said, but there's an exercise I'd like to do. It's probably going to take us about 20 minutes, but I think it's important. I said, my sense is that there's some things that we're not talking about that are impacting not only this meeting, but your team. And I walked over to the little whiteboard in the conference room, and I drew a picture of an iceberg up on the board. Now, an iceberg is a great metaphor for authenticity. Because as the cliche goes, right, just the tip of the iceberg pops up above the surface, right? The majority of who we really are, how we really think, what we really feel, what's going on is down below that waterline. And so I said, there's some stuff down here, and I don't know exactly what it is, but that we're not talking about. So I said, we're going to do an exercise, and I'll start, and we'll go around the table. Now, this is an exercise I learned a number of years back from some mentors of mine, and I use it often. It's a great exercise to get people to really open up. And I said, when it's your turn, you're just going to repeat this phrase. If you really knew me, you'd know this about me. And I said, look, you guys all know each other, so that might sound kind of silly to say, but just say it anyway. And my invitation to you when you're saying that is just lower your waterline. Let us know what's really going on. What are you thinking? How you feeling? What's happening right now? And I said, I'll start. I said, if you really knew me, you would know I have no idea why you people hired me to do this. I looked right at the guy. I said, I told you on the phone, right? Maybe you should find somebody else. But you talked me into coming, and I said yes, but I've been here for 20 minutes. First of all, I feel like I'm doing a terrible job facilitating this meeting. Second of all, I don't feel like I'm being listened to. And I have like a knot in my stomach. Literally. My visceral reaction is I want to leave. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. But I tell you what, I have a lot of empathy for all of you because I only have to be here for 4 hours. You guys have to work in this environment all the time. I wasn't judging them. I was letting them know my experience in the moment. Authenticity is an in-the-moment phenomenon. I shared a few other things with them about what was going on in my life right then, if they really knew me. And I turned to the first guy at the table. Remember, this is a room of bankers, right? This guy looks at me like, I ain't doing that. It was not safe what I was asking him to do. But he proceeded to go, and it was a little awkward and uncomfortable, and the next person went. And then the third person went. And when it was her turn, I don't remember exactly what she said, but as she started to talk, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And she started to get real. It's a visceral experience. And you could see people around the table like, ooh, we can go there. She gave everyone in the room permission, and we went around the table, and people really started to open up. And there were a few laughs, and there were a few pats on the back. There were even a few tears. And it had gotten kind of intense and a little emotional, so I decided I was going to give them a break. And then we'd come back and dive back into the meeting. And then right before we were about to take a break, the guy, he was like second or third from the end, he says, hold on a second. I said, what? He said, can I go again? I said, sure. Why? He said, well, I meant what I said when it was my turn, but I didn't say something because I was too scared. But I want to say it now. And I said, I don't know if I should say this, but here goes. He looked right at his boss and he said, if you really knew me, you would know I'm completely intimidated by you. So I'm embarrassed to admit it in front of everybody, but it's true. He said, I don't really speak up and tell you what I think. I hardly ever challenge you because whenever I do, it doesn't work out so well. He said, but if you really, really knew me, you would know that I talk about you just about everybody else in the room. And then he said, and here's what I say. And people were like, no. And he proceeded to tell his boss to his face how he really felt about it. And what was interesting is when it comes from that place, deep down below that waterline for real, it doesn't come out like an attack. It's vulnerable. It's real. And that guy sat there and listened, amazingly, to the feedback from that very brave individual on his team. And I knew from talking to a number of them, he was speaking for a lot of people. And when he got done, the boss looked around and said, he was like stunned. No one talked to this guy like that. Wow. He said, does anybody else feel like that? And people were like, he said, wow, well, if that's true, first of all, it took a lot of courage. And second of all, I'm sorry. And I could tell by the way it came out of his mouth, he didn't usually say that. And then he said, if you really knew me, you would know that my dad was really hard on me as a kid growing up. He pushed me and my brothers really hard. He just pushed us and pushed us and pushed us. And he said, we've all turned out to have pretty successful careers and successful lives. He said, but I never even really liked that as a kid. But that's just the way I learned. And it's the way I lead. And he said, maybe it's not always the best way. And what proceeded to happen, we took a break, we came back into the room, and we had a very interesting and very effective conversation with a group of people about their team. Not so much about what they do in their jobs, but how they can interact with each other in a way to be more real. I see this all the time, whether it's in businesses or in schools. When we have the courage to get real, amazing things can happen, stuff we can't even imagine, but it takes some courage. And it's amazing where it shows up. I'll share one final story just to close. Part of my background, as some of you know, is that I played baseball for many years. I grew up here in the Bay Area. I actually got drafted by the New York Yankees out of high school. Didn't end up signing with the Yankees because I got an opportunity to play baseball at Stanford. Went to Stanford, played there, got drafted out of Stanford by the Kansas City Royals, signed a pro contract. Went into the minor leagues, as you do in baseball. Unfortunately, I got injured my third season in the minors with Kansas City before I ever got to the major leagues. So my career ended when I was 23. And it was difficult for me, but taught me a lot about life, about so many things, about appreciating what I have while I have it, not after the fact. But because of my sports background, my baseball background, I get invited sometimes to speak to baseball players. And some of the major league teams will bring me in. And a few years back, actually, the first time I ever got invited down to spring training to speak to one of the major league organizations, I was speaking to their minor league camp, about 150 players. And I gave my talk, and I'm talking to a lot of the guys after my talk, and a whole bunch of them are telling me about something that happened at camp about a week earlier. They really wanted me to know about this, and they were intent. And I heard the story from so many different people, and I was kind of getting different versions. I went to my friend who was running the whole minor league system for this organization at the time, and I asked him, what happened at this meeting? He said, it was amazing. He said, we always have a meeting when all the players come in, but it's usually pretty boring. It's like, don't get in trouble, and this is when curfew is, and don't do that, and all. And he said, the worst part of the meeting is when the coaches introduce themselves, because they get up one by one and they give their resume. They'll say, hi, my name is Bob Johnson. I played in the major leagues for 10 years, and then they'll list off all the teams they played for. And he said, some of my coaches had very successful major league careers, some of them not as successful, some of them never even got to the big leagues. He said, so I never liked that whole way of introducing. So this year I asked him, when you get up to introduce yourself, don't give them your resume. Tell them your most meaningful moment in baseball. And he said, one by one, they were getting up and they were telling stories, personal stories, meaningful stories. And he said, towards the end, one of my coaches got up and he blew everybody away. He said, this guy's kind of quiet. When it was his turn, he was really nervous. And he looked at everybody and he said, hey, I played for 10 years in AAA without a single day in the major leagues. Now, AAA is the highest level of the minor leagues before you make it to the major leagues, right? Nobody plays in AAA for 10 years. You either make it or you're done. But this guy, 10 years, different organizations, I could never break through. And he said, finally, towards the end of that 10th season, I finally realized I wasn't going to make it. And you know what? I was upset, but I'd given it everything I had. And he said, so I decided I was going to retire at the end of the season. But I called my dad up on the phone. I asked him to come see me play one last time. My dad came to town. He was going to be in town for 5 nights. He said, I really wanted to do well while he was there. First night he was in town, he said, I got up in the second inning. I hit a ground ball to second base. I grounded out. I came back into the dugout. My manager came over, tapped me on the shoulder, told me to sit down. Took me out of the game. The second inning. He said, that normally happens when you don't hustle. But I hustled that time. I always hustled. Why did he take me out of the game in the second inning? I didn't say anything, he said, because I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I was mad. Sat down on the bench, about as far away from the manager as I could. Third inning, fourth inning, fifth inning. As the game went on, I got more mad and more mad. About the sixth inning, I heard one of the guys at the end of the bench say, can we tell him now? Can we tell him? The next thing I knew, the manager got up, marched all the way down to the end of the dugout, got right in my face, said, you want to know why I took you out of the game? I said to him, yes, sir, I didn't appreciate that. You showed me up in front of my father. He said, I took you out of the game because you just got called up to the major leagues. And the guy was like, what? He said, I didn't even know how to respond. He said, next thing I knew, I looked up and all 25 guys, the entire team, had surrounded me in the dugout to give me a hug. Now, that doesn't normally happen in the dugout, right? The celebration went on so long in the dugout, those guys were so happy for him, they actually had to stop the game. And as amazing as this story is, and it's a pretty amazing story, here's the best part. When this coach told this story to a room full of 150 minor league baseball players, he broke down and cried in front of all of them. Now that never happens there, ever. And a week later, dozens of those guys were coming to tell me the story because it had touched them. That's how powerful it is. When we're willing to be authentic, it both liberates us and it touches and inspires the people around us. That's the power of authenticity. Thank you very much. Thank you.